a desire to be you, some creativity, and loads of joy can give rise to amazing conversations. Please do listen in Theatre of Joy. And like and subscribe, please. Roy Jacob is a facilitator, trainer, and a conflict mediator. He is the founder of the Conscious Communication Academy. He grew up in the US and worked as a software engineer before he came looking for his true calling to Kerala. He works with various non-profit organizations, corporations, and individuals looking for transformation. He also mediates and coaches people through conflicts. Roy has been facilitating workshops and retreats for the past 12 years, including those of the international organization Yes Jams, the India Youth Jam, the EcoJam, authentic relating, deep ecology, and different kinds of team retreats for NGOs and corporations. Roy believes in the transformative power of slowing down. Apart from this, he enjoys farming, simple living, and watching the stars at night. Welcome everybody to the podcast Theatre of Joy. Guys, today we have Roy Jacob, a very dear friend of mine and a very interesting person. And without wasting any time, I'm going to put you on to Roy, and Roy will tell you all about himself. Hey, Roy, over
Hi,
to you.
everyone. All right, nice to be here. I'm in Mysore at the moment. Some nice greenery in the background. And yeah, a little bit about myself in a nutshell. I actually grew up in the US, but you might tell my family's I come from India. My roots are in Kerala. And I decided to move permanently to India in about 20 years ago. So I've been in India since then, and I really feel at home here. Like I didn't feel a sense of belonging where I grew up in the US, and I feel much more of that here in India. And my journey in India has taken me different places. I've been on a farm much of the time in Wayanad, Kerala, and doing permaculture and living really simply, discovering so many of what my real needs are, real needs like nature and community and abundance of time and physical activity. And I've also been doing, for the last 12 years or so, a lot of facilitation work, where I work with a lot of young people and a lot of change makers, with a lot of personal exploration, as well as looking at how we can collectively change the bigger systems around us.
Wow.
So
Roy, we know each other for 20 years. Oh my goodness.
yes. You're one of the first people I
Yeah.
met when I came here.
Yes. And how exciting. Of course, I've seen you through your whole journey. And from living simply, like you said, to facilitation. That sounds amazing. So, what are the spaces you facilitate in?
So one of the main spaces is the jams. The viewers might have heard of the India Youth Jam or the EcoJam. There's a lot of different jams happening in India, and I've been one of the facilitators for that space, and that's been a really rewarding space for
jam?
me. It's a space. It's usually a week-long retreat for around 30 people, where we come together. And the reason it's called a jam is that everyone brings something of themselves, some of their own stories, their own truth, their own authenticity and vulnerability. And together we create some magic. And usually in the course of the week, it takes a couple days maybe till the trust in the group really like drops down to a deep level, and people really start to open up and be real with each other. And it's quite magical. It's one of those things that it's a little bit hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. But I know from myself and from many people who have experienced it, it can be life-changing. And it's definitely been life-changing for me. And I think maybe especially as a facilitator, where me and the other facilitators, we have to really embody what we're talking about. So when we talk about being real with each other and not avoiding conflicts, for example, that's something that I remember 12 years ago when I got into this. It was hard for me to be real. I by nature I'm a conflict avoider and a people pleaser, and so I want harmony. I don't want to, if there's any kind of conflict, by nature I want to just give in and not talk about it. And in the process, I lose something of myself, right? I become smaller, and I just, by giving in, I don't always feel good about it. I may build resentment, may eventually just like leave the relationship, which is the pattern that I've had most of my life. So the jam gave me some of this like self-awareness about what was going on unconsciously, and gave me some tools to be able to come into more choice of how I actually show up with others. And it's been a journey. I'm still on that journey. You know, like I know that I still have so much internalized inferiority from growing up as this little brown boy in the US, that I've I've come a long ways in kind of overcoming that. And yet I know I still have a long ways to go into claiming my voice, claiming my power. And yeah, and I hope even doing something like this, normally being on in a public space like YouTube is scary for me, and it's something that is definitely in my, what I call the stretch zone. That's something we talk about in the jams, where it's outside of my comfort zone, but it's still something that I can do. I can be present here, and yeah,
So
so
I
I'm
can
happy.
very much relate to your, avoiding conflict. Like I think many of
Yes.
us who are listening might,
Mhm.
also relate to it. Uh, would you expand on that a bit?
Yeah. So
Also,
I think,
also, yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry.
yeah, I think I have this tendency of like avoiding conflict, and I know other people have a tendency to maybe jump into conflict and maybe even like create conflict. Again,
Oh,
completely unconsciously. Maybe that's the pattern that has served them, to kind of get what they want, get their way, maybe. And yet that also has consequences, right? That might also turn off other people. Like that can also lead to lost friendships. And so the work that is done in the jams and the work that I'm doing now in what I'm calling conscious communication,
mm.
has a lot to do with finding ways to turn that conflict into transformation, turning conflict into deeper understanding and connection. And I've experienced that in ways that have just blown my mind, that it's even possible to actually use conflict as a tool for getting closer to someone. And
Oh,
yet I
wow.
know that the people that I'm closest to are the ones that I've been real to, that I've talked about I've had difficult conversations with, vulnerable conversations with, hard conversations. Those are the people that I'm closest to today, because that trust is there and that understanding is there. So these are all like just kind of tools to help make that possible, to transform conflict.
So I read somewhere you'd written spaces of transformation. That's intriguing.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, like that's actually a really good question, because it's also something that I've been wrestling with, actually of late, because I really enjoy these week-long retreats, and I've seen some deep transformation happen where people touch some deep spaces, maybe some pain in their lives, even some trauma from the past, and are able to bring that out, and for it to be held in a healing way, in a safe space. And I've seen and I've experienced this myself, where um, I'm not the same person at the end of that experience. I'm different in some ways. I've been maybe healed in some ways. I've been empowered in some way. And yet the reason why this is kind of juicy for me is that I've also been realizing that the 1 week retreat is not enough. that I've been
Mm.
talking to people who attended some of these retreats 10, 12 years ago. And there's usually like a couple things that, sticks with them, but a lot has been forgotten and a lot has gotten lost. And so I've been really interested in this question of how to make those changes really stick. And really that's what transformation is about, right? Where it's changing my day-to-day life. It's changing all of my relationships. Um, and I think that does happen after a week-long retreat in small ways. And I'm really interested in how to make that happen in even deeper ways.
So what you're saying is
And
that change actually is not the same as transformation.
I think
Transformation.
it's something deeper.
Mm.
Yeah, like I can change something superficially, I can change the clothes that I'm wearing, but transformation is something that it's like something from deep within me is different. And
Mm.
so the way I show up is different without me even necessarily trying, you know. I sometimes joke because I call my current body of work conscious communication, but in some ways it's actually about unconscious communication in the sense of when I get good at it, I don't have to be conscious anymore about it. Unconsciously, I'm speaking in a way that is more authentic, more caring, more empathic, more assertive, more in my power. Yeah, that's kind of the goal for it to be an unconscious thing.
So
And that's
that's
where
what I
that's
be
when it's
then.
transformation.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I be. And it's not
Yes,
just
yes.
some behavior I've adopted.
Yeah, yeah. Changing really who I am. And sometimes these kind of more maybe superficial changes, like changing the words that I use, they can lead to that deeper transformation.
Mm.
And sometimes the words alone are not enough. Like I have to have that deeper transformation, maybe first, and then the right words will flow out.
Mm.
So I don't know if you're familiar with this nonviolent communication word NVC. But
Non-violent
that's yeah,
communication.
nonviolent communication is one of the other inspirations for this work, conscious communication, that I've been. So conscious communication is kind of an evolution of nonviolent communication, and I brought in some of the tools from the Jam and from some other modalities like authentic relating, and to try to create something new, that kind of. So I think that nonviolent communication has a lot of great things going for it. It talks a lot about getting in touch with our feelings and needs and being able to empathize with ourselves and others. And it has this beautiful vision of creating a world that works for all. And I share in that vision. And I also at the same time feel that nonviolent communication has some limitations to it. And I've been wanting to kind of transcend some of those limitations while including the best of it as well.
Okay,
And
so first,
yes,
please tell us in layman terms what is nonviolent communication.
okay, so
And
nonviolent communication. Yes.
sorry, yes,
Um, yeah, let me
so many
just
questions.
finish. Yeah, I'll just finish one thing that I was saying and then I'll get to this,
Yes.
which is just to relating that to this conversation about change and transformation. Is that so nonviolent communication is it's a tool set that um, focus a lot on changing the words that we use in the hopes of changing our consciousness. So it also has this vision of transformation, and yet the way it often goes about it is by changing our language. There's a lot of focus on changing our words. And what I'm trying to do with conscious communication is to go a little bit deeper into that deeper transformation first, as well as changing the words we use, because the words matter, but our energy, what's coming from deep within, also matters a lot. Healing, all of those things, I think are that deeper transformation is really important. So to answer your question about what is nonviolent communication, or NVC, this tool set that was developed by this American man named Marshall Rosenberg, and there's a 4-step process: observation, feeling, needs, requests, where it's a way of empathizing with others and with yourself. That can help. It can also be useful in conflicts, and it can help make conversations more connecting and authentic.
But can stop at cosmetic change, you think? So,
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, so I've met, whenever I mention nonviolent communication to people, I about half of the people have something positive to say about it, and about half the people, or maybe sometimes more, have something cringe. They cringe a little bit when they hear nonviolent communication because they've heard it sort of being used in a way that sounds very formulaic or robotic, or they've been in some way they felt like it's too restrictive. And I know I myself have felt this way, that sometimes I'm like, I'm not allowed to say certain words in a sense. I mean, NVC doesn't say you should or shouldn't do anything. And yet that's often the energy that comes across, is like, this is the,
I can imagine, yeah.
the way to talk about feelings, and this is the right way, and this is, the wrong way. They don't use the words right or wrong in NVC, and yet somehow that gets transmitted energetically.
And how is it different from conscious communication?
Yeah, so conscious communication, and it's interesting that I'm doing this as part of Theater of Joy, because I was thinking about this before the call, is how is this connected to theater? And I think there's a lot of juicy material around that I'd love to explore with you more around that. But one of the things that I'm wanting to bring to conscious communication is a sense of play, and a sense of possibilities, a sense of like, there's so many different ways I can respond in a situation, and none of them are the right way or the wrong way, and I have choice, and it's a creative experience. And so I'm really wanting conscious communication to feel not at all restrictive, like this is like how I'm supposed to speak, this is the conscious communication way of speaking. I really want it to be just a set of many tools that I can choose from in the moment, and everything's allowed, and everything's a work in progress.
Sounds good. And so you can choose to have conflict when you have a sense that, okay, that will help. I mean,
Yeah,
that will expand your world or the other person's world. And you can choose to have not have conflict. Yes, that's interesting.
I might choose to. There might be some people that I'm choosing not to address conflict with, because I want to choose my battles, and that's okay too. I've often discovered that it's I've never regretted an opportunity to work through conflict. Never regretted it. It's always led to something meaningful. Maybe even just learning about myself, even if it hasn't led to a complete transformation of the relationship. But it's always been meaningful for me, and yet I know I have choice. And yeah, there's some times when I've chosen not to engage in working through conflict also. So that's
Yeah,
okay too.
engage was the term coming in my head. So sometimes you avoid and not engage, like you said earlier.
Yes,
And
but I want to have the
always leads
tools
to something good.
so that if I have the tools, then I can really make a genuine choice. And if I'm skilled at the tools, I can make a genuine choice. If I'm not good at something, then I might choose to, that's not going to work, because every time I've tried to engage with conflict in the past, it hasn't worked. And so forget it. I'm not going to even try. I might say that if I don't have the skill set. So what I'm hoping for is to share like some simple tools that can make it a little bit more easy for people to be like, yeah, I want to engage with conflict. Yeah. It's kind of funny. I joke about this with some of my friends about how there was a time period when I had seen the power of working through conflict, and I was so excited about working through conflict that I was like looking forward to conflict. I was like, yes, let's have conflict, because that's when it's gonna, like, we're gonna experience something deeper, and we're gonna really get real with each other, and yes, it's gonna be hard, but I know it's gonna lead to something positive. And there was a time when I was so like looking forward to conflict that I then had some difficult experiences with conflict where it wasn't so easy to work through, and that kind of humbled me a bit. to realize that, yeah, conflict, there's a reason that so many of us, that I've always been afraid of conflict, that so many of us like, fear conflict. There's a reason for that, because conflict can be really hard. And probably, I've had some really hard experiences with it. Probably everyone has. And yeah, so I want to respect the kind of the
So there
pain
are
and the
two,
harm that can come
we
from
have two
conflict.
clear things here. One
Yes.
is engaging, whether it, I mean, seen by itself. And the other is playing with possibilities.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you close the circle around engaging, then you might just say, okay, conflict is good, I'll do it. Or no conflict is good, I'll do it. But when you're playing with possibilities,
Yes.
then it
Yes.
leads to a much more expansive choices.
Yes. I love
That's
that word play. And yeah, that's something I actually want to bring more into this work. So one of the tools that I talk about in conscious communication is creating a container for a difficult conversation. So
mm,
instead of just jumping into trying to work through a conflict, I might create a container for it beforehand. So I might say, hey, like, I'm feeling a little bit, I have some feelings about what you said last night. Can we talk about it? When's a good time? And by just creating that little container, it gives a certain safety to be able to have a difficult conversation,
mm,
right? And I want to relate that to theater, which I was thinking about,
mhm.
theater is also about creating a container, right? You have whether it's a, stage, an audience, or whatever form it is, it's a certain container for an exploration.
Mm.
And I think part of the power of theater, and I know you've done some really revolutionary work around with theater, and part of the power of that is in that container, we can explore some really tough topics
Yeah.
that might be hard to talk about otherwise. And we
Mm.
can use some creativity to explore
Even
those
puppets,
topics. Yeah.
puppets
Yeah.
also.
Puppets.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now the question arises, where does authentic relating come in?
Mm. Yes. So authentic relating, when I use that phrase, there's a whole that's also kind of a movement. This is something called authentic relating games. It's a set of
Mm.
activities that help make it easier to be real with each other and to
Mm.
be real with ourselves. And so, like, for example, there's a game where I say, you know, being here with you right now, I'm feeling excited.
Mm.
And you might respond saying, hearing that, I'm feeling, and whatever is real, whatever is authentic for you.
Mm.
So that's just an example of one of the games. There's a lot of games that it's just a way of making a conversation a little less heady and a little bit more heartfelt. What's real right here in this moment? Like what's maybe even a little vulnerable to say,
Mm.
like maybe if I'm being completely real right now, I might talk about how I, when I got on this call, I was a little bit disappointed that the lighting wasn't right. Like my face was getting a little washed out because of the position that I need to put my laptop. And underneath that was some fear of judgment. Like I don't know who's gonna watch this. And yeah, and I can own that I have a lot of fear of judgment. And I want people to see me and look up to me. I want people to um, like think I'm someone worthy of, like, for them coming and spending a week in a retreat at, like I want people's respect. Yeah. Like, and in saying that right now, like, yeah, it's like a little bit of shyness in me of like, of admitting that. And, but I'm also like, yeah, I feel more in touch with myself. And I'm
Yeah,
curious,
because
how's it for you to
that's
hear me?
you. That's you, right? And
Yeah, that's me.
instead of
That's
resisting that or telling yourself that you're a bad boy, or, you know, just be in an allowance, and then maybe you'll become less fear of judgment also. I don't know. Maybe is would that be something that would that
yeah, you know,
facilitation?
it's a lot. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of times when I allow my vulnerability out, it can also shift, right? And so fear of judgment is something that I've been dealing with for many, many years now, and it's definitely had a shift. And it's also something that I have a relationship with. I'm like, okay, yeah, I have some fear of judgment, and I'm okay with that. Like that's part of me being human. And in some ways, I don't want to be completely over all of my fears. I don't know, like I feel like
That's
I wonder if I'll lose
interesting.
some of my humanity in that. So I'd rather be able to relate to my fears and to be authentic with my fears. And a lot of times when I am open and vulnerable like that, it gives space for the other person to also be open and vulnerable. And that can really be magical. And so that's something that I'm really wanting to bring out to the world. It's yes, I can heal some of my uh, the wounds that I carry, some of the fears that I carry. I can experience healing, and it's okay. It's perfectly okay that I have these wounds and whatever it is that is inside of me. It's human.
You know, it is coming to me that that container that you talk about, which is the space of transformation, which is something you know would choose so that transformation can happen, that could be called wisdom also. I think down below we're all, you know, we have that little wisdom, you know, space, unless, I mean, and we are gaslighted out of it by our elders, by our teachers. But then, if we were to be really in allowance and actually really, um, you know, not afraid to be authentic, uh, we can
Yeah,
lose.
and
Mm,
yeah, and I love that term wisdom. So a lot of these containers that I'm talking about, these are these are spaces where someone's wisdom is allowed to just come out through just listening to someone. So a lot of times, so in these retreats, there's a lot of space given and practice in just listening to each other without giving advice to each other necessarily. There's a space for advice too, but there's a power in letting someone just express themselves and being heard, being empathized with in very
mm,
simple ways, and allowing them to like speak out a little bit more of the depths of what is there, what is real. And
mm,
yeah, that can be transformational. And then a lot of times someone's own wisdom comes out. Like I might be
mm.
sharing something, and in the process of sharing, I come up with my own insights. And a lot of times those are the most powerful because I really own them. I really like it's something that I'm gonna really make work. And so that's like my wisdom coming out through these containers, these spaces of
And I think
listening
it's
and
it's so
authenticity.
important to have somebody in their wisdom create these spaces of transformation, because there's so many, I mean, almost all of us never have that. There,
Yeah,
you know,
I didn't have these, for most of my life. And a lot of times like in the jams, I've had this conversation so many times when someone has really touched something very, very deep, maybe wounds from the past. Um, and and they tell me, this is the first time that they've had a chance to share that with anyone. They haven't spoken, but they've kept things to themselves.
yeah.
And yeah, like and it makes me sad to hear that people haven't had those spaces, and to realize I didn't have those spaces. And
And
but
you
it
know,
also gives me a sense of hope that it's
yeah,
it's, it's possible to learn and to create, new possibilities.
as a woman, I know, and I'm sure, I mean, it's not only limited to women, but the best way to gaslight a person is not to listen to what they're saying, not to give them
Yeah,
that space to
right,
really
right.
express themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It
yeah.
just, yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, yeah. And there's definitely this, it's one of the things I talk about is around power and privilege. And so gender is, that's where there's a difference in privilege and power. And how do those dynamics play out? So yeah, that's a great example that you gave,
Yeah,
because a lot
but
of
I think
times
even
it's,
little boys and
yeah,
young men, uh,
absolutely.
yeah, don't have that space. You're
Yeah,
supposed to
yeah.
be something in this world, and if you're not
Yeah, for
that,
men, yeah, like for me growing up, it was like expressing emotion is not manly, or being vulnerable is not manly. Like so many things, like I've been told that I'm not masculine enough.
hmm,
And yeah, so there's different ways that
whatever
that
the
plays out
definition of
with different
masculinity
genders.
is,
Yeah, right, exactly.
and whoever said it.
Yeah, yeah, these norms.
So tell me the spaces of transformation that you create. One is the jam and retreats and private sessions. You also.
Yes, private sessions as well. In fact, I just started experimenting doing some of the conscious communication training as a one-on-one training, and
Mm,
I've been really enjoying it. I've found that it can go really deep, and it's also, for me, it's also quite a joy. I'm actually it's by nature, I'm an introvert, so I actually really enjoy one-on-one conversations. I have come to enjoy group work as well,
mm.
and yet it's not quite as natural to me. So yeah, that's something that I've been enjoying exploring when I'm there.
And if anybody can get to talk to you one on one, what a lucky man that or woman or that is.
Yeah, and that's where we also, this is another thing I was interested in relating to theater, is that one of the tools I've been finding more and more powerful, and I'm wanting to bring in more and more into this work, is using role plays.
Mm, yes, very
Is
powerful.
Yes, it's so powerful to be able, and that's also a kind of container where I'm saying, okay, you have a conflict with your father, let's say. Why don't we do a role play? I'll play your father.
Yeah.
And what would you tell your father? Tell me. Like, let's have this play conversation that's also real, you know? So it's both play and real. And and that can also be, that can lead to some really interesting stuff coming up, some of the depths, these unconscious things coming out, and
Mm.
and it can be powerful. It can be healing. Um, yeah, it can be
And it's been really
transformational.
used a lot since Augusto Boal uh,
Yes,
put his
theater of
work
the
out into the
oppressed.
world, because
Yes,
that's
yes.
that's what he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious to ask you if you have any tips on how. So one of the challenges that I've had in doing role plays with people, whether it's in a retreat or one-on-one, is, especially, look, I'm doing this with people that are not necessarily like trained in theater or anything, and so this question of how to make it real enough. The play a lot of times comes out, and a lot of times the realness comes out too, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes people struggle a bit, not always, but sometimes they struggle for it to feel real enough. So I'm wondering if you have any tips on um,
No, I'm sure that's what you all do in these jams is that afterwards sit and talk about it
yes,
and
yes,
expand the experience, which
right,
we do
right,
in theater also
yes. But I'm talking about like in the role play, in the play.
in the play.
Yes, how do I keep the realness of it um, alive? If you have any tips from the theater world, I'd
Uh,
love to hear.
mm, like what you call the container is
Yes.
creating the safe space which probably will come even before you talk about a role play in the workshop, the games that you play. And, you
Yeah.
know, if the space is safe and if it's time for the person to come out and really be real, it'll happen.
Yeah. So I'm curious because I have some, you know, friends who are like actors and actresses, and one thing that I've heard is that, okay, there's this, if I'm going to play a role, I need to really understand what is it like to be this person, right? And this is something that we do in conscious communication, is around empathy. It's around how do I get, what is it really like being this person? What is it like being you right now? Like, how do I really get it, really feel into it, like in my body? How do I feel? What is it like being this other person? How can I empathize to that deep of a level? And that's
But
something that, yeah,
yeah,
like
but you're not
whether
looking
it's
for the other. So this is the difference between the theater, community theater, and clowning, and
yes,
the other theater, which
okay,
is just
okay,
telling you stories about somebody else telling you stories about somebody else. But in a
yes,
community theater situation, there is no other.
mm,
I mean,
mm,
at least the space
mm,
is there for there not to be any other.
mm. I like that.
That kind of a theater is okay. You go watch something on television. It doesn't involve you, and you're just you know, a viewer. Then was mm.
Yeah. Mm.
But I've talked to people who have been facilitated by you, and um, I'm glad you're there in this world.
Hmm. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, no, it's also putting yourself out a little, which a lot of people don't have the courage to. They
Mm,
would rather be in that, like the television kind of a situation. I'll have my say, and you guys just listen and learn.
mm.
But
Yeah.
putting yourself in an interactive space is takes courage.
Yeah. 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 And that's something that I'm glad I'm doing this, because I want to
Mm.
do some things like this more. This is, I think, yeah, like I said at the beginning, this is where it's really edgy for me, is to, you
Mm.
know, I've had this idea of like making a YouTube channel, putting videos out, and yet there's that's the thing that's most scary for me. It's one thing to lead a group in a, you know, in a retreat center. I've done that so many times now. There's a certain comfort with that, but I haven't done this so much, being on video, and I want to do it enough that I get comfortable with it. So I'm really grateful. It's funny because uh, I have this, part of my fear is that in today's age, anything that goes out onto the internet, it's there forever. And you know, if I stumble, if I make
Yes.
mistakes, if I make a fool of myself, it's there forever. And yeah, and that scares me, terrifies me.
Oh,
And you know, it's what something that kind of helped me was, there's a few people I watch, you know, you, other people's like videos that they put out, and TEDx talks and all, you know, everyone that I always see these people that seem so polished, you know, not nervous at all, and just able to articulate so well.
you know
And
how they
I,
train the TEDx speakers? It's
a lot of
that's
training, right?
training goes in there.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because one of the people that I admire, there's this guy named Arnold Mindell, who he created this body of work that he calls process work. And I came across this video of, he's very articulate, and I came across a video of his from long back when he was just starting out, and it maybe was one of his first video interviews. And and he was stumbling. He wasn't as articulate, anywhere near as articulate as he is today. And I had just assumed that this guy is he's always been like this. He's always been like super amazing, and it just kind of made it feel okay, even if I do stumble a bit, if I, get frozen at times, don't know what to say, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
human, and that's part of the growth
We have a
experience. Yeah.
very great revolutionary Punjabi poet who was actually
Mhm.
killed for his poetry. And he says, of course, this is, I mean, I'm giving you a summary of it, is that, we will fight when there's a need to fight. And when we are called to fight, and we'll use whatever uh, ammunition that is required. So if it is makeup and whatever else, it's what we take and create our containers and jump into them and do what we have to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
so
mistakes are okay. Move on,
it
right?
takes about 20 takes when you make a video. So be it.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right?
It doesn't have to be perfect. I'll really have to let you go now because we are uh, ahead of time, but we can keep talking.
This has been
But I'm
lovely. I've
I'm
really enjoyed
really,
this.
really honored, and thank you so much, Roy, for taking out the time and sharing what you do and about yourself. And
Thank you.
it's been amazing. I don't want to finish the conversation,
I
but
know. I think we could.
it has
Yeah.
gone on for some time now, and we must do this again
Yes, I'd love to.
after you jumped in the video scene.
Yes, I think one day I'm going to come back. I'm going to have another interview with you, and I'll say, that interview that we did, that was the starting point for me. And I started my YouTube channel after that, or whatever it is. Maybe that's
Yeah.
going to happen. So
Yay. Thank you
thank you
so
for
much. Thank
that.
you. And thank you everyone for watching. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.